Hey guys, thank you very much for joining here today. We have our Reuters webinar here. It's all about enhance your data strategy for our competitive digital world, or the informal and unofficial topic of the day of this webinar: data, garbage, or gold. And that's what we're going to discuss with experts from around Europe, from insurers, from people active in the insurance and finance industry. And that's the big question: is data the gold? Can we, actually crush our combined ratios? Can we build new digital products and services to excite our clients? Or, are we getting lost in the flood of data we actually cannot digest, and we are happy that our host systems don't break together? I want to discuss this with our guests. I'm happy to have Hiek van der Scheer, Chief Data Analytics Officer at Aegon. I'm happy to have Desiree Metro here, CEO of OCC, Germany's leading classical car insurer. Felixs Wenzel, I just forgot Ollie. Ollie Venable, Strategic Solutions Director, Charles Taylor, InsurTech. Felixs Wenzel, Head of Data Engineering and Strategy at Ergo, and Pedro Miguel Machado, Data Protection Officer at Grupo Ageas in Portugal. And I told you all these names and titles, even though we are not about titles, to demonstrate you what kind of competencies and what kind of experience we have at this panel. So stay tuned. Don't forget to share on social media about this panels. That will make Reuters very happy. And, then we get more free booze the next time we meet actually at a physical conference. All right, that's it from me. I would love to give to Hiek and ask him, what do you say about a data strategy? Gold or garbage?
Hey, thanks, Robin. Well, first of all, I would definitely say it's gold, but it's not easy to dig it. So it takes time. For me, it's really a journey, and that's also the way I approach this within Aegon. Aegon is a worldwide financial institution. We're in different country units, and it's not something that you do on a Sunday afternoon. It's a journey of many years where you really have to find your where the gold is. So the approach that we're taking is we take it as a journey. We really look at it as a use case approach. So where is the value? Where can we add value? And it can be on the, like you said, on the innovative stuff, but it can also be on the back end more to support your operations. So it can be across your organization. You can use data, but you have to find the proper use cases. For me, what's really important to drive it is making people first. So it's not about technology. It's not about all the fancy stuff. For me, people first, because they have to do it. They have to do.
Your audio is breaking up.
The digging for where's the gold. For me, an essential element. Is it better now?
Yes. No? Thank God we didn't have any Zoom meetings in the last 2 years. Just kidding.
So for me, like I said, people first, it's really important because I really invest in people because they have to do the digging, so to say, to find the gold. And without leadership support, that's my fourth element. It's making sure that you have the top leadership support, not just as a bullet in your annual report, but someone who can really drive it. And it's not like if leadership support is there, it becomes a given that you make successes. But without leadership support, it's really difficult to drive the journey, to get a good strategy in place, and to find the gold.
Thank you very much. I have a short question. And by the way, everybody else, we agreed actually to be nice, but we can actually grill each other at this webinar. So feel free to fire.
Definitely.
You said leadership is important, and I agree, because without that you don't get the people, you don't get the people you have don't do this innovative stuff. Do you have some concrete tips? Actually, how do you guys do it very concretely at your company?
Well, one of the things that we did after I built the data analytics foundation, so the team, so having the teams, the people in place, I find it very difficult to scale up the proper use case. So where I find the value add in one business unit, how do you get it to another business unit? Because it's not invented here, it doesn't work like this in my country unit, all the kind of arguments. And leadership can really take a firm stand in that one to really push it. So what I did was I created a program which I called Analytics for Leaders, a 2-day program to really get all of leadership involved in what is the data analytics really about. And that was a 2-day program where the The first day was really about the art of the possible, showing what a typical analytical process is. It is hard work to figure out what is your business problem, how can you define your business problem into an analytical problem, how do you deal with data, how do you deal with ambiguity in the data. Data is not right or wrong. People always think data are bad or not bad, but often it really depends on the application that you have or how far you want to push the application. I mean, if you want to have a prescriptive model real time, then the requirements for the data are way higher than if you have a one-off insight that can help you to guide to a decision. Because even if the data are, so that was the first part of the day. The second of the first part of the training, the second part of the training was really, where are you as your organization or your department, and what can you do to make it happen, and with really concrete use cases. And I also held them accountable for it in the following months. So it was not just a nice training, and everyone says like great training, but we also said after 3 months, what have you done? These were the plans that you came out of. So how have you? But what was the progress that you made? But also, what are the roadblocks that you hit, and how can I help you to overcome those roadblocks? And I forced leadership also to bring analytics to their management teams, either to have showcases of data scientists. Data scientists will really come to sometimes even a global board meeting to show some of the new work that they were doing, but also to make sure that we created a culture of more data-driven decision-making. So challenging each other, this is a nice idea, but why do you think it's a nice idea? What are the data behind it that support this idea?
I'm going to steal the idea of a 2-day retreat to try to convince a leadership or to actually excite leadership about a certain topic. I think that's a super smart move, because you can annoy them all the time. That makes also, I mean, you guys are decision makers yourself, so you get annoyed, but maybe it's better to get somebody 1 day, 2 days, really push every content, all questions, do like really do it yourself elements from it. Maybe that really makes the click moment, and also work on how can we actually implement it in the company. I think I'm going to steal that idea.
But what for me really worked is we had a kind of a gamification of the analytical process. But instead of first presenting all the theory of how does it work, we just let them go. And then afterwards we presented the answers, and then they of course made all the obvious mistakes. And in that way the theory came in way better than if we would have turned it around and first present the theory, because the theory is often not that rocket science, so to say. Well, of course, of the hardcore machine learning models it is, but that was not the level that we went through. We said very high level. But that was the way to do it, like in a gamification, getting some competition in there, and break it down step by step. So take them through all the steps of the learning.
Any question here from the colleagues?
I suppose I just have one comment to it, and I think it's the need for then the bridging of the gap potentially between your leadership retreats and the people on the shop floor, on the coalface, as we would say, because quite often strategies can be built from your exco and senior leadership team. But actually, if the importance of that is not understood potentially by some of the other people in the organization, that's where you then begin to have a disconnect, because you can have a strategy, you can have clear goals, but if people do not align what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to your strategy is not worth anything. So it's crucially important that the leadership team does form that strategy, but also you get the buy-in, you get the acceptance and willingness for all of the organization to go in that direction together, because that's where you'll get success.
That sounds like a start of an interesting debate, and we should go that. And I keep the tension on purpose. Now we move our attention to Desiree. Desiree, you also have an exciting BI data journey behind you when you took over OCC. You want to share your thoughts, and what have you been up to at OCC?
Yes, thank you, Robin, and thank you, Reuters, for happening this event. Quite exciting topic. For me, I would like share something that for me is quite important, and it's also something about that he already told in the context of leadership. For me, it's more on topic, and the base of everything is like that you have the right culture. If you don't have a culture that allows a data mindset, you will never find your gold. You never will find your oil source at any point. So then you can give a lot of money in a lot of software and stuff, but it will not work. So that is for me something that's quite important. And if you have the culture, then you can also push by your leadership skills. And for me, like the data strategy or the working with data have to be not once a month on your strategic agenda. So it has to be something daily in your work in your work life, like checking emails. So you have to implement that through in your whole day and in the process. And then think it's quite the challenge to build an organization that have the data in the roots and in the daily life. And we at OCC are working hard on that, also to learn, to understand, and to also enables the people to understand what data we are really need, and what is the goal for that, and what brings us this for the business. I think that's also quite important, because as you already said, you can have a lot of data, and then what for? So what are you doing? And also another thing that's quite important, and I often don't hear it in a context of data, is also the customer point of view, because I mean, that has to be together, because otherwise it will also not work. You can do like the highest data strategy in the product, in the underwriting stuff, but if then the customer will not buy your insurance products, then you are not like, you don't will be successful. So it all have always go together, and you have to implement the whole data, like in everything, in every topic, you have to think about that.
I have a question, Desiree. Don't mute yourself too quickly. When you started at OTC, as Bert told me, there was not a lot of data analytics, and now you have like crazy BI things going on. And I hope I'm not sharing too many company secrets here. Can you illustrate a picture? How was it before? How it's now? And what's the value of it for OCC?
Okay, so the first day when I went in my new role as group CEO from OCC, I asked about Google Analytics login account, and everyone looked at me and told me, Google Analytics, we don't have that. Okay, so I was like, but we do have a website, or what? And what are you doing? So, nobody was interested in that, because they didn't know what to do. And I knew a guy who's sitting in Taiwan. He is like a digital nomad, and he was the rocket internet BI guy. So I call him and told him, Houston, we got a problem, so I need your help. And we was going through really build up a data strategy. So which data we need in the first setup of OCC, in the first transformation year of OCC, because the end game is always like something else. So you have to go step by step, and it's more important to do little steps, something more, and then a top, than to build the world tomorrow new, because that will fail. And so we were going on and push all these things together, and put every week we had one data section more, and we challenged that, and now we are like fully complete BI things. Everything is running also with in context of digital and of marketing, and we are like really happy that we are able, or that we can prove how our business increased. And we switched very analog and conservative business to fully digital, digital first, not digital only, and we did a lot with data. and we will ending up our year with the best year ever in the history of this company. So that's for me the proof that if you use data wisely and not that overload basics and do your job good, that can increase your business enormously. And yes, so that's the point where we are, and I'm really looking forward what else everything is coming next year.
So data equals more business. I think that's like one slide application for a huge data transformation project at each company, but for sure it's a good one. Ollie, what is your take on it? What is your experiences at Charles Taylor InsurTech? And yeah, share please your thoughts, especially also from your market, please.
No problem at all. So a bit like a very famous prime minister, I will say standards, standards, standards. Data, as we've said, is it garbage? Is it gold? It's quite often garbage when you don't have standards, when you have no structure, when you are pulling in a load of information, but you don't actually know what it is. You have demanding internal clients saying, I want more and more data. And you ask them the simple question, what are you using it for? I don't know yet. But I want more of it. And it's all about getting to a position where you have a comparison and comparable data sets that you can then draw appropriate conclusions from. Getting more data has never been easier. There is more data now than there's ever been. There are more sources of information. There are more methods and applications that you can use to get that data. But why? We've seen an explosion in the insurance market of, as you say, data scientists, BI developers, MI developers, all of these guys. But when they first started hitting the insurance or the London insurance, say 10 years ago, they were looking for things to do rather than trying to say, how can the business move on using this data? That's changing and has been changing so that we are a more data first view as a market. But we still have a lot of people in the value chain that don't adhere to that standards. And what that does is create friction. And if you have friction in the process, invariably people are involved. And if people are involved, they're going to take the easy way out. And in taking the easy way out, your data quality suffers. So you get into a vicious cycle. And that's why I mentioned earlier about where we see our leadership teams, excos, etc. And then where we see the people doing something. Because when those people at the coalface are capturing that information, they need to know why it has value. And that isn't just the people in your organization. It's the people outside of your organization. We mentioned clients, brilliant. They need to know why good quality data is good for them. Maybe it increases response time. Maybe it decreases the time for claim payment. All of these kind of things are benefits to your customers or clients. But we also have other suppliers. We have in the insurance industry, we have brokers, we have reinsurers, we have third-party administrators, we've got loss adjusters, we've got all of these people around that interact with us. And data is the key bit which enables us to work together. And yet, if you said to an automotive company, how do you build cars? You invest in it and you do all this great stuff to understand the design to the delivery. Yet we're running to catch up at the fact we're only really accepting that we're data companies. We've been data companies the entire time. When we were writing it on paper 300 years ago, we were data companies. It just didn't sit in the way that we see data is now. And I think this evolution, not revolution, so it's not going to stop. It will continue to evolve. This evolution to understanding the practical application of data through the value chain, it is completely changing the industry for the better. And I think that when people accept that and understand, get the data to the right standard, apply it in the right place, not just because you have it. Don't just bombard people with data because you think that they might want to use it. It's the worst thing you can do. You need to make sure it's practically applicable to what they are doing. They will warm to you. They will come towards your changes, to your development, rather than shying away. And I think we've all possibly seen tech-led things first. Here's a tech idea. You should be using it. Okay, guys, that almost never works. I mean, it could work sometimes, but it almost never works because you don't have the right buy-in. You don't have those key actors, key stakeholders seeing the benefit, the what's in it for me factor. You won't get adherence to what you're trying to do.
Thank you very much for that. I also, I'm sure the audience will have written down a lot of questions. I think what I take away from it is like data itself has no worth when it doesn't have a specific use, and everybody around us, or let's say, does anybody know a company, not a presence not included, where this is, I would love to have more data, but I don't know what I want to do with it. Or please collect a little bit of data, we'll use it later. Yes. All right.
I have a question for Ollie. On one hand, I hear you saying standards, which I couldn't agree more. On the other hand, you're saying let's start with a business that has a particular need and let's make it happen for the business. And so that feels sometimes like a little bit in contradiction. It doesn't have to be a contradiction, but it can be a contradiction to say let's go with it, almost shadow IT, and let's make it happen quickly. I mean, that's often what you see, and you create value. On the other hand, you're bypassing all the standards right away. But if you apply standards, it can be the red tape that is providing any innovation to happen with data.
Absolutely, and I think that the key part is that it's a duality of application. You can't just do one or just do the other. You do have to consider them both. But I would argue that if you're doing too many shadow IT skunk work, as we would colloquially call it, you're going to fall foul, because if you are not adhering to a standard, if you're not adhering to a full mandatory principle of the data you are collecting, what you're going to do is start comparing data incorrectly. And the example would be if you have data that you believe is at a certain granularity, but other data is at a different granularity, you can do one of two things. You can either not compare those or start making assumptions on the gaps between those levels of granularity. Those assumptions, should they be right or wrong, are going to potentially massively impact decisions you're going to take. And if those things are done in satellites, and if they're done without that overarching viewpoint as how that's going to work, that's when you can start veering off very, very quickly in different directions. So it's hard. This is a day by day, 24/7, 365. You need to be on it, because as I say, we're either data companies or we're working with data companies every day. The data is our company, and that's the importance of it from the from the person you meet at the front door of your organization right to the CEO. Everybody should have an understanding that it is the data that matters.
To be on on top of things is also important during such a webinar, and it's also super important to be on time, because I already got a yellow card from Reuters. Nevertheless, I think it's important to have this discussion, but let's save the fist fight for the end until we have heard everybody. Felix, you work at Ergo as a head data engineer and strategy. You've been a little bit quiet until now. So what is your take on everything you have heard right now? And what are you guys actually doing at Ergo?
Thanks, Robin. I'm actually listening, and it's funny when it comes to data. You hear a lot of people talking about transformation and people first. But unfortunately, when it comes to use cases, you see epic failure, and not only in the insurance industry, but across all industries. So let me try to be a little bit provocative. Data is not sexy. Maybe for me, but for most people, data is really, really unsexy. Yeah. So when you look at Ergo, with almost 30,000 employees and 17 billion euros on premium income, it's so diverse. You have to not to look at data for itself. You have to look at the benefit. Yeah, profit is sexy. Yeah, and responding to the challenges in the VUCA world. Yeah, that's interesting. And if you think more of an adoption, because I completely agree what Ollie says. We are data driven for the last 200 years. Yeah, data is at the core of our business. Yeah, developing products, underwriting for risk. This is insurance. Yeah. We've been looking at and assessing risks all the time, and we need data for that. So that's nothing really new for us. So I plead for thinking more in terms of adoption. Yeah, let data not be the wall that hinders you from doing successful use cases, but treat data as a core strategic asset. But yeah, you have to convince the people on all levels, not only the top management, on all levels, to understand what's in for them. And maybe at this point in time, we have to be a little bit pushy to convince the one or the other, because we do not have the time. I definitely believe if we do not switch to this, to those data opportunities, we are going to miss it. Yeah, but insurance business is extremely complex. It's stable. Yeah, we have a lot of regulation around it. I believe the GAFA players, they do not want to enter the insurance market. So there's no point in panicking, but we have to see those data challenges. So it's gold on the one hand side. On the other side, a lot of what we think is gold might be garbage. Yeah, we have to sort it. We have to have some governance. We have to encourage people to work with data, and we have to see how we can realize business value from using data as a strategic asset. That's more or less how we see it at Ergo. That's why we decided to build a comprehensive data strategy for the whole group. We just finished that. I'm very happy that now we are not only talking about, okay, this is now our group-wide data strategy and everybody goes to sleep again. No, we are talking about the funding. Yeah, we want to make the change, and of course we have to think of things like data governance, data quality, data lineage, all these things, metadata driven approaches, business ontologies, but yeah, we have to relate it to profit, to use cases. There has to be a value. Data in itself has no value. I'm not the one who believes we can monetize data just like from selling it. Yeah.
Which might also be a funny thing, considering that, our clients don't trust us with a lot, but on the other hand, trust us with a lot. They don't like us, but they trust us a lot with their lives, their health, their finances, their assets, and sell them data for €2.50 might not be a smart move, as we've seen also with other industries. My question to you is a little bit, you just wrote and finalized the data strategy for Ergo. Are there like one or two things you might like to share without getting fired for it?
Oh yes, of course. And I think those unsexy parts of the data strategy, where it comes to a target data model and some kind of a data vision, every company has to do it for themselves. Yeah, you should do it before you start to invest in data. You should really do that, because sometimes a data strategy there's some confusion with the digital strategy, and you should sort that out. But there are overarching things, and one thing where I'm really happy is that within our data strategy we require, or we suggest, a mindset change. Desiree already talked about that. Data today is widely not regarded as an asset. Sometimes it's even seen as a risk or a liability. Yeah, so you'll find guys in the IT department who say, "Oh, come on, let's delete this data. It's so costly to have it backed up." And by the way, there's this that's EU regulations for critical infrastructures, and it puts a lot of burden on us. And then there's GDPR. So come on, let's just delete it. Yeah. Why historize that data? Yeah, and this is definitely not the way to go. You have to perceive data as a core asset. Yeah, you have to have high quality data, and you have to start sharing data. So regard data as an asset, and this corresponds in the same way to data literacy. And things like that, data specialists who sometimes do not the most sexiest job, they are scattered across the organization. So I do not believe in a data transformation. Yeah, you will not transform a company like Ergo only from a data standpoint. Maybe this will carry you for 1 or 2 years on top, and you're going to the boardroom and talking about the data transformation, but then you'll be, yeah, nobody will listen anymore to you, because it's about using data and not data transformation for its own sake.
I can tell a funny story. I mean, we are always, bashing ourselves in the insurance industry and say we are late for that, we are late for this. But a funny story from e-commerces in Hamburg is one of the largest e-commerces, actually last man standing in Europe against Amazon, Otto. And what the Otto Group did until a few years ago, or some years ago, they every year they had the catalog, and they got all the orders from all Europe. And after each year, they deleted all the old orders. So there was no customer behavior, no up and cross-selling. So, it's not us that do sometimes not do a good job. Other industry fail at these things too. All right, before I get a call from, Mr. Otto complaining about the stories, let's move to our next speaker. Let's move to Pedro. What are your thoughts when you hear this, especially with your view out of the Portuguese market?
Okay, well, first I want to thank you, Reuters, for inviting me to share about this subject of such great importance for organizations and society, especially for the insurance industry. I would like to take this opportunity to greet all my fellow colleague speakers and all those who are watching us in this webinar. Let me start to give an introduction that seems to be also a little bit provocative, but I think that can help in understanding the theme that brings us here today. Everything in life has two sides, good and bad. For instance, when we start studying risk management, we see the term risk describes an event or set of events that impact into the objectives, which can have two dimensions, the threat and the opportunity. By focusing too much on the threat, we start to lose the ability to exploit opportunities. And in the end, risk management aims to minimize threats and simultaneously increase those opportunities. This dichotomy is equally present when the focus is on the data. There is a side of opportunities and the side of threats. So I believe that this awesome discussion about enhanced data strategy for competitive world produce a very relevant contribution to all society, which in my opinion should be well explained from and to all stakeholders. When we look for the external context perspective from the political, regulators, sectorial associations, stakeholders, these topics are very welcome since will contribute to a most agile and better service to all society, most customer-driven, tailor-made products, etc., etc. And in my opinion, this should really start with know our data approach, seeking to inventory data that can be spread in different and isolated formats and volumes, and should be known and mapped for further explored. Nowadays, most of the companies have relevant isolated groups of data. that can take in the form of raw data that isn't yet being processed or analyzed, what we call data silos. And sometimes this data is stored in a way that makes it unreadable or inaccessible by data tools. Most of the time, data silos occur for different reasons, normally related with organization structured issues. For instance, companies need to separate departments and business units to split specialized teams to be more focused on the business, which leads to the existence of barriers that leads to those data silos. And for those who may think that this could be a nice to have, and not something really important, even that data silos may seem innocuous for a specific part of the market, it will impact and compromise business success, leading to, and we know, companies slow down, bad communication and collaboration, inefficiency, for example, low service quality and credibility. So indeed, this is a very important topic to take into account, especially as a DPO, as a data protection officer. I don't think the discussion is just whether we should explore this issue, but how to do so in compliance with legal and regulatory obligations, especially related to privacy and personal data. The application of a data strategy should always be embedded in a compliance program, because there are severe obligations that must be respected. I know that we will have people coming to this webinar from different geographies, but if we look especially for GDPR in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation, we identify the need to ensure the data processing register, which goes along with the inventory that I talked about previously, the information notice to ensure the transparency and the adequate information to the data subjects, the lawful ways that will be critical for us to authorize to process personal data. Of course, in this case, I am speaking specifically about processing personal data, but we know that there are other kind of types and categories of data, which are not personal data, but may also be subject to those rules of processing according local legal system. I'm referring particularly to company data, metadata, application data, logs, whatever. Well, to summarize, it is essential that exists an adequate data management in accordance with a properly planned data strategy, but in total compliance with legal and regulatory obligations in force.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to all the questions from the audience. Take your time, write them down. We have already a few, but we will come back to that in a minute. So I'll give you a little bit of time to write your questions down to this, data specialist. My question to Pedro is a little bit, to all actually, but Christmas parties coming, company Christmas parties for those who actually are able and allowed to meet. And you have the parties going on, everybody is nice, even people that don't like each other talk, to each other, and everybody, the mood is good. And suddenly, in the moment, everybody's starting to enjoy the company event. Somebody says, excuse me, we just used the 23 euros 22 allowed by taxes. Now everybody needs to pay for him or herself, and that's like the compliance guy. Isn't compliance and privacy like the party pooper of insurance, of the future of insurance? And what do compliance and privacy need to not be the party pooper?
You remember a funny quote that I read some time ago that says, if you think compliant is expensive, try non-compliance.
All right. Shout out to IOPA. All right. Good answer to a very good question of mine. Very good, very good, very good. Thank you very much, Pedro. All right.
Well,
please.
Yeah, Robert, maybe to jump into that question, because I think it's a really good one. What I try to do is really form an alliance with privacy, with compliance, to really make sure that it is a common challenge that we have. I mean, in the past, it was much more like, I'm doing analytics, they do compliance, and we're always fighting about everything. And now I'm trying to close that gap, work together, make sure that we have a common goal. And the common goal is to really utilize the data. I'm not saying it's easy, but at least it's going way better than it used to be in the past. And also, one of the questions was, the fundamental is to really make a distinction between the defensive side of data and the offensive side of data, and really make it explicit. Like, what are the things that we expect from the defensive side? And that was some of the things that Pedro was talking about on the GDPR, the regulation, etc. But then make sure that in the meantime, you already look at, okay, what do we want on the offensive side, and how can you also create an environment where it is feasible? So I created a sandbox environment for my data scientists, where they can do much more with the data than, let's say, you would normally do with the data. It's still within the rules of the GDPR, etc., but it's giving it a little bit more freedom. Within an area where the data are, you cannot download the data, you can only work with the data. And so that is a way to mitigate some of the issues, which we jointly set up together with the privacy and compliance teams. I see some nodding from Ollie and Desiree, so
I absolutely agree. But I think this is really important, and that should also be a message to everybody who listens. It's not only about the fear for reputational loss that insurance companies are normally a little bit conservative when using data to really drive forward new business models. Yeah, it's really, I think it's when you look at it from a European standpoint, it's really something that's really valuable that we have GDPR, and we should be compliant. This is a unique selling point. Look at Americas, North America, United States. In California, they adopt data privacy. Yeah, they start to do it. Look at China. This is not the model that we are going to see in our world. This is not the way. You have all those scandals like Cambridge Analytica, and this is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to build on trust, to give the consumer, the customer, a really safe feeling based on measures, based on compliance, based on reviews, external audits, that we really do it in a proper way. And then it's a unique selling point. So in German, I actually don't know the English word. I was not prepared for this, but we call it ambidextrie, and that means using left hand and right hand like at the same time with the same skill. Yeah, you probably know what I mean. And this is what I see as a challenge for data. Be compliant, and on the other side, treat data as a strategic asset and work on the opportunities. And if you fail with that, this is probably not the way forward. So thanks for your question, Robin, and also what you said. I absolutely agree. It's extremely important from my side.
And I would suggest to add on to that, Felix, is really call it out. I mean, we call it out, this trust and how we want to treat data for our customers in our data strategy. So that maybe it's a no-brainer because it's, from a regulatory point of view, a must-have. But the fact that you put it in your data strategy alongside with your offensive side of data, really make sure that you find that balance what you were talking about. So don't think, okay, it is somewhere in the regulations, so leave it out. No, make it explicit.
Cool.
I totally agree what Felix said. I think it's quite important that you also bring in the customer points of views, and then you have this really this USP, and it's also when it comes together with data compliance and all the legal stuff. I think it's also important to use the brain. And think also like it's not everything is not a regulatory, so it's like also we are all humans, and we are interacting human with machine, and we have beliefs, we have needs, we have this customer needs, and you have to bring this all together, and it's not only the paragraphs that are important.
I have a question from the audience. So thank you very much, audience, not only for listening, but to contributing actually to the discussion. And one question, Emily Dimitriades asking, what are the fundamentals of a data strategy? And I would add a little bit spice to it. So what are the fundamentals of a data strategy? And what is like one part of a data strategy everybody needs to have, and why? Who wants to answer that?
Can I flip it a little bit? And I mean, Felix gave some great insight into some of the data strategy stuff they've been doing, at Ergo and stuff. So can I say what it's not? It's not a document you write and then put in a cupboard. That's not what it is. And sometimes, again, that's what happens, right? So you have a retreat, you have workshops, you have all these things, you create this brilliant document, and no one reads it, and nobody follows it, and nobody is acting upon it. So what it is not is an exercise of creation of a document. And that document will detail the tooling you have, the processes, the rules on how you're going to manage, analyze the data, how long do you keep it, who has access. It'll have all that stuff, but it's a living document. So it should be returned to. You shouldn't be changing your strategy fundamentally all the time, obviously not, but it's a living document. You should be going to it and referring to it and ensuring that you are actually acting upon what you said your strategy was. Because the worst thing a company can do is come up with a strategy, believe they are following the strategy, and in fact going the total opposite direction, and they have no idea that's happening. So that's one thing I'll say. It is not just a document you put in a cupboard to tick a box and get the compliance guys off your back. Compliance, legal, all of these people are here to defend your company. And that gives you that defensive that allow you to get on with the offensive. And the offensive is the sexy stuff. You know, I know Felix doesn't think it's that sexy, but a lump of steel is not sexy, but a Ferrari is. So you get from one to the other. So the sexiness comes later if you deal with the data in the right way. And compliance, legal, all these guys help defend you. So that allows you to go off and do other things. So they should be the forefront, included in your strategy. And it's a living document.
So let me come back to the question Emily asked, and I actually like that, because often in these discussions we get carried away and seem to be evangelists or whatever, gurus, data gurus. No, so I really appreciate these questions that are down to earth. So what is a strategy? What is the strategy? Yeah, this is actually the first question. So you want to reach some goal over a certain period of time, and there are lots of possibilities how you could do that. So there's a solution space that's very wide, and your strategy starts, and this is from my perspective, one fundamental: make an assessment of your situation, of your actual situation. If you don't know your starting point, you will most probably fail reaching your goal. So, but that's very general for any strategy. Then you have to have the strategy itself, and maybe it consists of a vision. Yeah, everybody should actually agree on, hopefully, and maybe there's also some, like as I explained before. We were focusing a little bit on opportunities from data, and not so much on the risk management side, but still, of course, the first sentence is we adhere to compliance, but this is maybe the data strategy part. And then looking at this solution space, you should become and that's my personal perception of developing a strategy in a company, you should become more specific at how to reach this. So you need some kind of roadmap, and come on, let's face it, if you don't measure it, it will not improve. So you need to have some kind of let's call it data KQI, so that can also be data organizational KQIs. So this is all part of the target operation model, and so these, from my perspective, are the fundamentals from data strategy. Starting point, have a vision, and then have a target operating model and some kind of roadmap. It does not have to be detailed. It does not have to answer each and every question, but that are, from my perspective, the fundamentals. And everything else, like people talking about AI and pretending it's the magic wand that will change the company. No, it won't change your company if you haven't your data strategy right. And I would even go so far. Most digitalization efforts are like bushfires if you don't get the underlying data foundations right, and that's why a data strategy is so important. And thanks, Emily, for this fundamental question. I'm interested what my peers here in the call say.
But I would like to add one thing, Felix, because I really like the way you describe it, and I think you're spot on. One thing that really helped for me is that at the moment you define a number of pillars that you want to grow on. So what is the east in a number of dimensions? Is to also be realistic of what should be the sole situation, because what you see in the organization is that everyone wants to go to the highest level, let's say the 5, but that's unrealistic. So I really made the management team or whatever team that had to sign it off to make choices on, okay, where do you want to be on par? So you want to be at 3, which is fine. Everything is in place. And where do you want to excel? And where do you want to be? So where do you want to be at 5? And what I often see is that everyone has the ambition to go to a 5, which is fine to have that ambition, but in reality, it's not feasible. So besides the East, make sure that you have a feasible soul in mind with an in the timelines that you set for yourself.
I would like to ask one thing. What I really like about the whole discussion about data strategy, and Ollie said it, it's not a printed out document you actually put into a folder and then are happy. This actually happens also with the social media strategy, the sustainability strategy, the diversity strategy. Sometimes even you get a person that gets a job on cuddling with the document, but nothing is going to happen. So I think this is the crucial make it or break it point for all strategic processes. Is it just meant to be a document, or are we putting it into life? And the big question is, how to actually do it. So maybe you can spend a few seconds on how do you actually, as a decision maker, and you guys all are decision makers, but every boss got a boss, if it's the board, advisory board, the owner, whoever, but how do you guys actually make it happen from, paper to practicality?
I think if you don't have also the data in your structure of the company, if you don't have people with also with the role of data, of BI, and the whole organization don't see it this and also in the organigram, so it will never happen. So it's for me, it's always quite important that somebody has the head of data, of BI, of analytics, compliance, and everything that's going. And in the end, it's always execution. Just do it. I mean, it's as simple as that, but you have to try it out. And as Felix said, I totally agree. You have to strategy, and then look at which point you are at the moment, and go, and then you have to go forward and just do it. I mean, it's as simple as that.
I have a friend who has a slogan in his company. It's not only said, just do it, just do it. It could be actually great. So
yes.
all right, one last question to everybody. I would have last question to everybody, and that is actually, what is like a result of the usage of data strategy in the insurance or outside the insurance industry? Some concrete example that blew your mind in the last years. A combined ratio that imploded, efficiency that went through the roof, sales that went up, costs that went up. Do you have something you want to share?
I did have an example where comparing data sets from often insurance companies buy other entities. There's lots of mergers and acquisitions. We know that as the market expand and contract, you get bigger players created from small players coming together. And actually the application of the data from different lines of business that may not have been part of the existing one, and the correlation between things. So the example was the company insured caravans, so like moving home, like motorhomes, caravans, that kind of thing. And they absorbed another company that happened to do pet insurance. And there was a definite and concrete link between people having caravans or motorhomes and them having pets. And those two systems apart, they wouldn't have seen that. But because they were able to align their strategy about pulling everything together, not linking the systems, but linking the output of the systems into a reporting layer. And that was part of the strategy they wanted. They wanted to look across the whole portfolio. They were able to up their sales of pet insurance to the caravan owners, because most people have caravans or motorhomes because they don't want to fly with their pets, and therefore they sold more pet insurance. So that's a direct example of the strategy of wanting to put their arms around it. So when a new company came in, the strategy of how to absorb that data and how to weaponize it to make it create more value for the organization, and actually leading to a direct correlation in an increase of premium.
Thanks. Does anybody have another example like that?
I don't know, Robin, whether my example is as hands-on as Ollie's example, but we experienced a real breakthrough when we started to apply best practices from the data strategy approach to dynamic pricing efforts at Ergo. And these dynamic pricing efforts were always like a little bit it was difficult because the database was just not right. Yeah, the data was not there in a timely manner, the frequency of the data, and also the data itself, it underwent over the years so many steps during those ETL processes. It was really complicated for our actuaries to build these models, and we all know dynamic pricing is required. So when looking at that, we said, coming from the data strategy and with a couple of data engineers with me, we came to the business and we said, come on, we are solving your problem, and we are doing it in the data strategy way. And they said, oh no, please stay away. This is going to be costly, and it's going to be just another exercise to comply to some textbook and stay away. And we said, come on, let's try it. And we did it. And we said, okay, we have to do the whole dispositive database. We have to build it new from scratch, from the operational system. So we used some modern data vault technology to build the database, and we populated the data. We got the frequency right, and we ingested metadata, business metadata from the beginning. We introduced key quality indicators in the process. We documented the data lineage, and now, and that was only like 4 sprints, so an 8-week project of like 5 or 6 skilled data engineers together with the business, very close together with the business, and it was a great success. Those guys really said, this is great, and this is for me a good example how to become more competitive in our VUCA world based on a proper data strategy and a good and bringing this data strategy live.
So this is the good way to win the hearts and minds of the actuary, as a starting point to win the hearts and minds of the client. Thank you very much for being here. I'm super excited. Desiree here, Pedro, Felix, Ollie. We are almost there. I would love to wrap it up with a short summary, data, gold or garbage. I'd take away 3 main points from today. One is data has no value of itself. Seems like a no-brainer, but if you think about it, we have all seen the situations in companies where people wanted data but actually didn't know what to do with it, and that it needs to be has a specific purpose. I really like it because when we can show the company how to make more money or save a lot of money, they will give us all budgets in the world to do whatever we want with data, even compliance stuff. Second point is data strategy is not a document. Super strong point. I think data is a daily practice, like checking emails or TikTok or whatever, wherever you are. It's a culture thing. And I love also the step-by-step approach, not the master plan, do the step-by-step. And the third thing I take away is, yes, be compliant and produce great digital services based on data. So that's the 3 things I take away. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Reuters, for having this session. Thank you guys for being here, the audience. And by the way, reach out to these experts here. They're on LinkedIn and all social media platforms you can think. So don't be a stranger.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks, Robin.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.